I would love your perspective on just like you've been playing professionally in college, high level D1. Like, who are you, and what keeps you going and doing this and being happy to do it and staying healthy and doing all the things that you need to do to get to the next level?
Yeah. Well, first off, dude, you do know like what you're doing. You told me bridging the gap, like or filling the void. It's like it's not just a void. It's not like a crack and crevice that you just got to repair. It's like a huge bridge to fill, like a huge gap to fill. And I mean, I think what what you're doing like with Mind Ready is perfect. Like at the end of the day, the longer I've played, the more I've realized there's these like false identities and these false, rocks we've like put ourselves on. And so for some of us, it's got us really far. Me being a great example. I've been able to play baseball on my 7th years in pros now, college. A lot of people be able to experience that, but ultimately with those false identities, like they just break. Like right, like you can't like stay on them forever. And Sahil will be able to speak to this too. Really, any athlete, because I mean, you mentioned Zach. Zach was the biggest clubhouse guy. I mean, like he was just able to talk to anybody. Everybody had a joke. He was pretty level headed. Like every day on the field, you were going to get the best out of him. But underlying, there was just so much more there that he couldn't explain to anybody or didn't think he could explain to anybody. And it was like this. It was like a persona that he had that I think surprised a lot of people when he unfortunately basically took his life. So, I mean, I totally understand it. And the really interesting and personal experience, like you just asked, is that I was able to go to Stanford, which is a high stress environment. And it's funny because we get labeled as a high stress environment. So then when you go in thinking it's high stress, it's not really that high stress because you've already like been so built up to it. You're like, oh, this isn't that bad. But I took college classes at a small school back home. That was more high stress than some of my Stanford classes. So we're all dealing with these high stress environments, however we want to label them. So and I mean, like it's not just like you're not a one man team. Some sports there are, golf and tennis and wrestling. It feels like, but especially baseball. There's 40 guys going through relatively the same thing. And that was one thing that just was Zach, like you mentioned. It was once we were able to actually discuss some of these things, and it's talked about as vulnerability, but it's not necessarily vulnerability. This is just the lives we live. Vulnerability has like a bad connotation to it, but just being able, we're all human, we're all going through something, and it's not always going to be great. As an athlete, if you only have great days every single day, then you're either probably Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tiger Woods, maybe, and even those guys had bad days. But other than that, you're not nobody else. So I love what you're doing. I think it's going to have an impact on a lot of people, and starting this podcast is going to give a lot of people an opportunity to listen
Yeah.
and empathize.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You touched on identity. We talked about failure. You mentioned in your text earlier, like failure, identity. What is it about like how you perceive what you're doing? And how is it that you are like how do you find your perspective to continue to pursue these things? Like you're on year 7, you played 4 years in college, all of the years of summer ball. What is it about getting up and doing it every single day that you find to be worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean that's really a great question, and that's taken me a long time personally to figure that out. I have a bunch of teammates that will talk about this, and a lot of my teammates don't know why they play, which is interesting at the highest level. But that's okay because sometimes we just get led that we don't realize how far we make it down certain paths with just overall athletic ability or just certain mindsets. They're able to take us so far, but the thing is like when I started playing baseball at a young age, I played all these sports. I played it out of just like joy. Like I loved playing baseball, right? I couldn't imagine at 7 years old making the 9U All Star team, or like an older level team, and then when I made that 9-10U All Star team, I couldn't fathom it would have felt like winning the World Series to make the next All Star team. And like fortunately, I was able to. I didn't do that at first. It wasn't even that good, but as I got older, I started getting a little better. And I just kept playing. I just loved it. Like I just wanted to be out there. It was just the best way to describe it was just joy. Like I got so much from it. I just enjoyed it. I was competitive, but just because I loved the sport. And as I progressed, I started to realize, and I'm sure a lot of kids go through this too. So I was like, man, I really want to go to a good school because I just, it would be, I don't know, great to go to a good academic school. And what could it lead to? And I was like, oh, well, I'm really good at baseball. Maybe that's a good in to, so like it started off where like I love baseball and I was like, oh, but like I really want to go to a good school. But then I got like a little better at baseball than I was at school. So this like joy of baseball like kept like the steady hold in the front. But sure enough, other things get thrown in there, right? Like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, high school passes and there's just that joy of the game, your teammates. I can tell you every single high school game we played. I play 150 games a year. I might be able to recite one pro game to you from last year, but I could tell you every single high school game with my teammates who hit the game winning run, how far we made it every year, just because it's just that joy, right? Like it's just stuff that excites you, you remember. So, anyways, college comes, and all of a sudden there's this school identity thrown in it. And keep in mind, my classmates are pretty impressive people too. Yeah, I still see a lot of them like on the TV today or reading about them in like Forbes or something. You know, they do really cool stuff. And so then all these opportunities get thrown at you. And in a way, it's almost like an identity crisis because my true identity is like just being a leader, serving others through being a good teammate and being like, in a way, a warrior, a baseball player. Like those, if you ask me now, my true identities, but it's taken a long time to realize those because I've had these identity crisis, which crisis sounds like a strong word, but they're just these deep thoughts of why am I playing baseball? I should be on Wall Street. All my classmates are on Wall Street. I'm you know a brother. I have three brothers, so I need to be closer to home. But I'm going so far for the sport, and you know there's all these like things that just pop up, especially during the bad times, where it's like, why am I doing this? And it's like because I'm relatively spiritual, but like I just believe, well, I was made to be these true identity things. And so when you don't believe that your true identity, and you know, I'll say for you, just hearing how you talk about Mind Ready and what you've done, you also love to serve others and make and empower others and heal them. You know, you've done that through more than baseball, through Mind Ready, like in like some of the greatest ways. And I can clearly tell you have that passion for it. And so 7 years of pro ball, I've wrestled with these true identities. I've had valleys, I've climbed mountains, I've been in the deepest valleys. And during those, I question, why do I do this? I should be starting a company. I should be making six figures right now. I look at my resume and it's like just believing these false identities, but it's like, no, I'm my true identity right now is to be, you know, a warrior through baseball, is to help, you know, help my teammates. Maybe it's not about me making the major leagues and making, you know, personally make, but maybe there's guys in the clubhouse, which I have some really cool stories on that really need my experience. They need just things I've learned so that they can help get out of their ruts right now. And it's become that. So it's almost like trusting that. And it's hard to do that sometimes because we're scared. We're scared to just say, what is my true identity? You know, we think sometimes our true identity is to be the president of the United States or to have these huge impacts, but sometimes it's just to be what's right in front of us and to just love that. And when we have our true identity, we can just flourish. You know, you're happy. You have that joy again. So going back to that joy as like a young baseball player, that joy is just coming back to me on the diamond again because I'm just trusting that this is my true identity.
When you think about joy, you think about doing it, year 7. And for the high school athletes that are listening, or even the college athletes too, or even year 1 or 2, I only played 2 years in professional baseball. On days where it doesn't feel like joy, on days where it's really hard to get out of bed, and you really think like, is my body gonna do it? Is this the right decision for me?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I continue to do it? Like, your why is to serve others, but on days where you doubt yourself, what are some ways, what are some things that you do to go, you know what, I am in the right position, I am where I need to be?
Yeah, I mean that's what a great question. And like I wish I could tell you that I was just perfect at this, you know. And it's like it's just not the case. And I have so many of those days. And I think I would say, just talking to my teammates, they have so many of these days, even the ones that are doing the best and the ones that even that are doing the worst. We just have these days. And I think one thing is just to, every day is going to bring something new, and baseball is Groundhog's Day. If you can keep in mind, we do the same thing every single day, and this. It's in season, this is what a day looks like. Just to paint a picture, it's wake up at 10 p.m. It's at the field at 1, practice 1 to about 6 o'clock. Get ready for the game. Game's at 7 to 10. You're out of the clubhouse at 10:30, 11. Decompress for 2 hours. Go to bed at 1. Wake up at 10. 160 days in a row. Am I wrong? That's so. So you can understand how there can be this when something's out of whack, and such as a thought of, man, I just don't have it today. You can see how quickly that can come on, especially later in the season after a bad outing. But the thing that has been so hard is just realizing that two things. One, like those days that are tough are the days that are going to, one, shape what your long term is going to be after that. So how I'm going to take my bad days and what I'm going to decide to do is going to shape my long term on the diamond with my teammates. But I think the biggest thing that I've been able to do is just address and be honest with myself when I have those bad days. And I think at first I had a really tough time with it. I was able to get away with just kind of pushing them away and just kind of faking myself into these conversations where I was happy. I put a smile on my face. You and me are the same way. We just, sometimes we can get away with putting smiles on our faces, and it usually works, right? And it's like, but deep down, it wasn't taking care of the root problem that, like, I don't have the motivation. I'm failing right now. I believe I'm failing right now. I don't know how to get out of this. And it took just basically me confronting myself and saying, listen, you're not a failure. You're going to have bad days. What you decide to do next is how you're going to come out of this. You're going to have a few options here. Which ones are you going to choose? And I know we can get to that point, but it was just being truthful with myself. And every day and I've had him, the spring training, and we talked about this a little bit before, but just even a small injury hiccup. I've never, been injured before. So I have to I'm going through this like wilderness time of what do I do? How I navigate these next few days and weeks is going to dictate a lot of how my season is going to be. If I believe that I'm just hurt, and I believe that, man, my teammates are playing, I'm here, kind of just, I'm already behind the ball, well, then I'm probably going to stay behind the ball. But if I can just be honest with myself and say, I have an opportunity right now with some great trainers, with myself, to just do what I need to do to stay healthy and get healthy, and that's one small example, but these come up all the time in any sport or athletics or dealing with coaches or anybody.
How has spirituality affected your career, right? How is having a depth of knowledge in like an area that can support you on and off the field, like how has that impacted you for positive or for negative?
Yeah, dude, it's been everything, man. It really has been. And like in just so many ways. And I'll just preface it with sports brings out the best and worst in a person, especially the longer you play. Everything's going to be exposed. It's going to be put on the surface sometimes, or put on a platform or pedestal. And sometimes it's in front of a lot of people, and sometimes it's in front of nobody. Just loneliness, and being able just to have truth, like, and I'm Christian, and I things that I just believe to be true, and having just truth through tough times. And really, I'd say the biggest thing that has been is just a relationship, and getting myself out of these out of loneliness, because sometimes you just feel like it's only you, and basically it's not the case. I mean, one thing that I know I've been leaning on a lot lately, and my whole career, is that I've played like through a lot of fear. Like I've just had a ton of fear, and a lot of way that drives athletes, right? Like fear is basically the reason sometimes it gets us out of bed in the morning, the reason that we can perform so well. But sometimes fear can also be some of the things that kind of gets in the way of that true identity I talked about. And one thing that I've, just always relied on is like the most recited thing in the Bible is just do not be afraid. Just do not be afraid. And it's recited over again. And why do not be afraid? Because I am with you. And that has taken so much pressure off me in so many ways in this relationship with my sport, with my spirituality, with my family, with my teammates, because I just understand that at the end of the day, like this is not life or death. Like this is we have an opportunity to go out there and be the best versions of ourselves on a playing field, showcase what we have, and it's not life or death. And there's going to be another day, and there's going to be another opportunity, and there's going to be stuff after baseball. And just knowing that we ultimately are in control of some small things, but I don't believe we're in total control. I believe that anytime we have the opportunity to just intercede on that like perfect will we have, then we can do that. And I've seen that, and that's a personal experience, but I've had some teammates that have some just amazing stories of how, you know, their lives have been changed and how they've been able to play their sport for so long because of just, you know, getting out of this selfishness and this loneliness, being able to play and work through this fear.
It's really like thoughtful answer. I appreciate you bringing that up. I appreciate you sharing it. When I played, even in college too, I was nervous before every single at bat. I couldn't tell the difference between like fear and the fear of failure and like excitement or anxiety.
Yeah.
Maybe after years of playing, you're like, this is my job. This is what I need to do. I've prepared enough. When those thoughts of fear come in, is there anything that you do specifically in like a pregame warm-up, in that morning, that afternoon, like right as you're walking out to the mound? What specifically is the techniques that you use to kind of calm yourself and settle yourself down?
It's funny because I think like what I found out is that fear overrides this joy that, you know, when I was younger, I was still fearful, right? Like I just feared like certain things, but I never let it override this joy that I had because there was only so much pressure on yourself. You're a kid. You're just a young kid, and like, what's the limit when you're a young kid? Well, that, you know, you have a good day at the plate and you might make the all-star team, right? Like this, like it's like it seems like the world, but really it's super obtainable. And so this joy is able, you know, every day on the diamond, the things you're working for, who you're playing for is usually like your parents or, you know, your friends or your teammates. But fear like gets in the way with this. So like just being able like I've had these problems just like Matt's had, where I just sometimes let it paralyze me. And I would venture to say 90% and probably 100% of my teammates have been paralyzed by fear out there. You know, we play against the best ball players in the world, and stuff gets in your head. But the thing is like fear has overridden this joy. So I've just tried to say, okay, like where does this fear, like what fears do I have around baseball or my life, right? Like, okay, well, there's a fear that like, but you know, my family, I go farther away from them because I don't live close to them anymore. Okay, that's a fear. Or my wife, you know, that, you know, being in, you know, away from each other a lot could have a turmoil in a relationship. I have the fear of money. Like there's a fear around the game of like, you know, will I be able to make a living off this? There's the fear of the day. There's the fear of, well, this four-hole hitter is really good and my stuff does not line up with his stuff. There's the fear of my teammates are all better than I am, which is usually the case. And, you know, I'm, you know, slipping away into the, so do you see how like these things just creep into our mind? And then these questions get unanswered because they're just all self-promoting, right? Like they're just these self-promoting questions that do the exact opposite, like self-demoting, if anything. And so that fear has like just, it can paralyze me or anybody in playing so quickly that you lose that joy. So be going back to these fears, it's like, well, that's not the truth, right? Like I'm feeding myself these really tough lies. And so like, you know, am I going to get released today? Like, is that my fear that I'm taking out there when I go out to every day that I play? Or is my thought process like, today I have the opportunity to play a game that my 7-year-old self would literally just faint if he found out that he was doing, you know? And it's like shifting, and that's the truth. The truth is not that like I'm going to get released today. I told myself that. But also like the truth is that my 7-year-old self would faint if he found out he was playing pro baseball. So it's just kind of like, and you mentioned like before games, is there anything I do? And, you know, I just try to like be present in that moment. And it's tough playing 151 of these things in the minor leagues to just, you know, especially when it's Groundhog's Day, like I mentioned, but it's just taking that time right before. I don't have like any crazy superstitions or anything, but like I really just try to take that time, last 10 minutes in my locker, and just kind of journaling, just writing down what I felt today. and just kind of writing down, like, I would consider it a prayer, but really it's like, for anybody else, or if you're not spiritual, be like, just kind of like how I feel, like where I'm present right now, what I'm thankful for, like just small gratitude, just kind of being where my feet are. And that's not something I've always done. And it's something that I've had to learn because I've had some really, really, tough stretches, like physically just performing, and also just, myself. And I just think that's kind of like something that's kind of helped overcome that fear. We like to falsely identify it as excited anxiety. Have you ever heard anybody
I
say that?
haven't. No, that's great.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's not anxiety. It's just because I'm excited. It's like, well, it's because you're the unknown's happening. Like you don't know what's next, so you're a little fearful.
Journaling. Why did you start journaling? How has it impacted you? How has it been helpful?
Yeah, it's tough to get started. I've gone through like stretches where I've stopped, but every time that I start journaling again, I'm always so happy that I did. Um, because I mean, today in the present, we just have information overload, right? Like, especially if you're an athlete right now listening, or anybody, there's information overload from your work, from your school, from seven different coaches telling you seven different things, but really there's just one of you. So I have this information overload, and a lot of the times I have these just like really good thoughts, really present thoughts, but they'll slip away because unfortunately we just move so quick. And journaling has given me an opportunity to do two things: physically, just journal what I feel out there, and that's really helped when pitching is very monotonous, right? It's one motion. You do it a million times, it can drive you literally insane. It's tough to perfect, and if you do perfect it, you usually play for a while. So it's very monotonous, and so physically it's really helped with that, just writing down things that I feel, things that are good, right? Like not writing down the bad things, but feeling, this felt good today. And it's trying to kind of staying away from what felt bad, because sometimes they can just trigger things in your brain that all of a sudden you're thinking about, don't do this, don't do this. So just writing down 6 or 7 like good things I felt that day. Usually they're the same things for stretches, and then maybe a couple stretches, a couple weeks go by, and I'll add one more good thing to that. Oh, I felt my whatever, my hand out front when I was throwing, just stuff that feels good. And then the other half of that is the mental side of it, which is just the gratitude side of it. And that's just the same thing. Like I mentioned, I'll just write down a few things that felt really good that day, thoughts that I had. Sometimes they don't even pertain to baseball. I'll have like a weird like thought about like hunting in the off season, like, oh man, I'd love to, which I like to do. I'd be like, oh man, I would love to do like a trip with my brothers there. You know what I mean? But it's like not strong enough that I'm gonna like dwell on it. And I'm like, oh, just write that down. Like that's great. Like that excites me. And a lot of times it's just like stuff that happens with my teammates, conversations that I have, that maybe I want to go back on, or with my wife or something like that. Just good thoughts, and that's really helped out a lot too. And I think journaling has been, I think a lot of people want to do it, but they just, it's just like another thing to add to your daily list of like to dos. But it's not like a journal checklist. It's like that's your time to actually like think about what's going on around you, and to just take a deep breath almost, and realize what's good in the world almost.
I love that. I never did. And I wish I did. I wish I had, because it allows you to like take a step back and observe it, right? The best advice I ever received when I was playing was like, you are a mountain and your thoughts are just clouds. And I think might have
That's
got it
great.
on like the last day of my career. So wasn't that helpful, but it really has, like, that has really helped me prepare for everything else I do in my life. And my journey playing like opens up so many doors. And I don't think that I hope that people who are getting into it, or the athletes that get into playing like professional sports, understand like the immense how quickly it all goes by. And for me, it was a blink of an eye. And for you, I don't know if it has been. Has 7 years been a long time for you?
It's been so quick, man. It's
Yeah.
so funny you say this. I text you. We had to wait a couple minutes because I got in from the clubhouse to do this, and the reason is I got in there, and there was a guy. He's 23, and he's like, "How old are you?" I said, 27. I go, "How old are you?" 23. And I said, "Dude, 23 feels like yesterday."
Yeah.
I was like, "I can tell you so much about 23. What a great year." And he just told me, he's like, I'm just having trouble being present right now. And I understand that. Everybody tells me that. And I mean, we didn't have a solution, but like he's aware of it.
Yeah.
You know, he's aware of the opportunity that he has at such a young age to just enjoy like this beautiful sport that he plays, the people he's
Yeah.
around. So
I
it's
wish,
funny you mentioned that.
I wish I got to
But
enjoy it more, you know?
and I think that is everybody's regret. This is I had there was a one of our last days of spring training was only a few days ago, and I just really befriended one of the guys, and he's just a great kid who's gone through a lot, and he didn't to get an assignment he wanted, so he's staying an extended. Like how much can like any of us empathize with that? Like we don't make the team we want to. We don't like it's the worst thing that can happen. It seems like as an athlete, right? And he goes, he's like, and he's just a great, and he's a great ball player, and he's going to be good. He's young, but he's like, what do I do? And he just was asking, like, what a great question. Like, how many people just ask that? Like, he was asking this to two guys sitting, me and another guy sitting there in the pen, and he's like, what do I do? Like, you guys are older, and it was me and another guy that's on the same year, seventh year as I am, and you know, he was just searching for answers. He just had learned that he can't keep this bottled up, and he was at the point where he just was asking. And I just told him, I said, "There's only," I said, "Listen, I know your circumstance. I've been there. It's terrible. It's going to be a long time that you're going to be feel like you're going to be here." But I said, "There's really right now, all you can do is just control what you can control. There's going to be people around you that are moved up, that are moved down. But every day, if you just get a little bit better, you're going to look back and you're going to realize in 100 days how many at bats you have, how much better you got every day. And then your career is going to look like this. And then it's just going to get here. And you just got to trust that." And I said, I'll tell you one thing. I said, just, you know, circumstantially, if you can, play this game as long as you can. I know you're young. I know you're thinking right now, I'm not going to be here much longer. I said, just don't play this game as long as you can until someone takes the ball out of your hand. Because I'm telling you, you're going to blink and it's going to be out of your hand anyways. And I said, I'm on year 7 right now, and I can't believe how quick it went.